Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Overwatch League Report. I'm your host, Tamor, filling in for Brian yet again. But I'm joined, as always, by Ben.
Hey,
How's it
week
going, Ben?
two.
Week two.
Yeah,
Sorry about the no-show from Brian. He sends his sincerest apologies, and he sent us a message this time. Um, Actually, quite a positive message, saying that he started playing scrims with his infamous new team, the Tijuana Tigres. So they're playing scrims against local teams, and they've been performing really well, apparently, with their 5 DPS and 1 healer comp. I don't know how. Maybe they're playing against, like, children, but who knows?
yeah.
we,
Maybe the ping in Mexico isn't that great, and so the other teams are just on a low ping.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Anyway, we wish him the best of luck. Always good to hear from him. But as for us, let's talk about some Overwatch League. We had a pretty boring week. I don't know. In my view, it wasn't
How
too
dare
exciting.
you?
Sorry, but
There were at least 3 interesting matches.
yeah, that's true. There were a few that were pretty fun, but on the whole, yeah, at least for me, there was. It just seems like a lot of the fights were one-sided this week, with a bunch of teams going 4-0, and a lot of like mid-tier teams facing against each other, with the exception of one really, really awesome match, which actually started off the week, which was Houston over San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco loses their first match in approximately 12 and a half years, and it's to a team who have not seen a win since Jake was in diapers. So
Exactly.
it's so this is the world we live in now, where I guess the Outlaws are suddenly good again.
Yeah, what? Like, so I'm just like speechless. I mean, it was honestly such a fun fight, and by the end, I did find myself rooting for the Outlaws just because it was like, they fought really hard, and they had some really great plays. But what do you think San Francisco did wrong? Is that maybe that's the question we should be asking?
I think they just weren't really prepared. Like, I mean, they probably should have been at least a little bit prepared because of Houston's performance against New York in Week 1, where they almost beat New York in that match as well. They should have been. I just feel like they didn't take Houston seriously coming into the match because there was not really any major precedent for them to have taken Houston seriously. You know, the Shock are one of, if not the best team in the league right now. They have some like very minor consistency issues, but like they also had a perfect stage last stage, so
Mm-hmm.
those consistency issues haven't really shown themselves too much. And Houston has been a total mess, like all around up until this week, or maybe like a little bit last week, where their org has kind of been in shambles. They have new ownership now. Their coaching has been inconsistent. Their play has been up until this week pretty lacking, and the team that they've been running has been also all over the place. They're one of those teams who has been up until now incapable of finding a team that can actually run consistent goats. And so now they have Linkser on Zarya, and Linkser in there consistently, so they can flex them to these weird DPS comps.
Yeah.
And other players such as Raucus and even like Jake are playing at a much higher level than that we've seen in Muma as well. So I think that it's a combination of Houston kind of just getting their shit together finally and playing at a better level, playing compositions they're more comfortable with an overall team that seems to be gelling a lot better. It seems like the organization as a whole is operating at a much cleaner level. And San Francisco just didn't really expect anything coming into the match, and they played very sloppily. They made a lot of mistakes. They were kind of forced out of their comfort zone, and they did not perform to the level they're capable at.
Right. And of course, Houston was able to go 4-0 against Boston the next day, which, I mean, I guess it's not quite as much of a surprise. Boston has been looking kind of bad lately, as well as a few other teams that played this week, like Fuel and Charge. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's really amazing that Houston was able to pull that off, and I do think the stage they're going to be in the playoffs. I mean, the rest of their schedule going forward, this stage is totally doable. I mean, I think they're playing Washington, they're playing who else?
Florida. So it's
Well, there you
Paris,
go.
Toronto, Florida, Washington, and all four of those teams are easily beatable. Easily, they could
Yeah.
easily go 6-1 this stage at the level that they've been playing at this week and even
Mm.
last week to an extent. And that's exciting. I mean, we kind of you kind of want to see some new blood in these stage playoffs because we've you know as exciting as the San Francisco versus Vancouver rivalry that's building up is, where we had them in the finals of both of these stage playoffs. You kind of want there to be a chance that we're not just going to see a third version of that in stage three.
Hmm.
And the fact that a team like Houston is like in the conversation for being that team is like mind-boggling. If you had said that to me 3 weeks ago, I would have laughed in your face. But
Exactly.
yeah, here we are. I mean, I think this is the really exciting storyline for this stage, because there aren't like we're at the point now where I think everyone kind of has an idea of where all these teams are at. There's like some jockeying for positions of like, oh, who's the fourth best team and who's the fifth best team, or who's the
Hmm.
ninth and who's the 10th. But like we kind of have a pretty solid tier list,
Yeah.
and this kind of like comeback story for Houston has a lot of legs for being like the major storyline of the stage.
Yeah, exactly. And another team that I want to bring up related to that sort of where that standing of where do they fit is Atlanta Reign, who we've seen over the last few weeks in their last few matches have been really dominant, beating New York and coming very close with a lot of these really top tier teams, but then losing both their matches this week. One of them being a total upset from Seoul Dynasty, and the other being a pretty close game to Shanghai, but still a loss nonetheless.
Yeah, I think the thing we've talked about with the rain is that their strength of schedule for these 2 weeks has been really rough. They played the Shock and the Titans last week, and they almost beat the Shock. And they played the Dragons and Seoul this week, and both of those teams, I would say, are in that like tier two conversation of kind of like that 4 through 8 area. And so I think that we can definitely still consider Atlanta a potential like mid to high mid team, somewhere in the like 9 or 10 area, and they definitely do have a lot of potential going forward. We mentioned last week that the Daco back in the lineup permanently, seemingly, hopefully, is
Mm-hmm.
really good. Daco is really strong, and although he did struggle this week, particularly in the Seoul matchup, I think that overall he is still a pretty strong presence in the team. Baby Bay again has really come into his role on Zarya. And I think that the team overall is functioning at a higher level than they have in the past, despite the fact that they are 0-4 right now on the stage. So I think that it's just kind of they've had a rough 2 weeks because they've been playing teams that have been significantly better than them. But I mean, they haven't been totally crushed in all of their matchups. 2 out of the 4
Yeah.
matches were close. So I still think that we can talk about the Atlanta Reign as a probable team to go into this end of season play-in bracket with the 7 through 12. I think they're probably pretty likely to end up in that range still.
Right. Exactly. And some other teams, I guess, questionably in that range, who we saw maybe didn't do so well this week are, for example, Dallas Fuel, Boston. Uh, I guess let's talk about Boston, who, to me, I mean, I just think they really got to put Aim God back in. I mean, he's such a strong player, and he's one. I think maybe you know their best player. I know Fusions is like a leader, and he's a really great Reinhardt, but I think they need someone like Aim God on the end. But
Yeah, it is very perplexing what Boston is doing to the stage, where they are trying to get these new guys in. Well, I guess Alamau is not super new, but he's new in that he hasn't played at all in the first two stages. But they're trying
Hmm.
to get Alamau and especially Persia some playtime on the stage, and it feels like they were trying to do this in matchups where they thought it would be a little bit easier, like against Paris and against Houston, but it doesn't seem like that's worked out very well. And then in addition to that, in their first matchup this week, they made the decision for some reason to swap Color Hex and Blase's role, where they put Color Hex on Brigida and Blase on the Zarya in their goats composition, which was a total an abject failure
Yeah.
on all levels.
Yeah.
Like Color Hex has really grown a lot as a Zarya player to the point where I'd say he is like a mid-tier Zarya at this point. And so it's like I can understand that if like Blase is frustrated that he doesn't want to play Brigida, then it's not like you're not going to get the best mental out of somebody who's just like hating the roles that they're playing on the team constantly. But I mean, there are better options, and I think that in the first map of the Philadelphia game where they put Blase on the Doom Fist and they played this Doombra comp that Element Mystic popularized that we talked about last week, and they played it to great success in that map.
Mm.
I think that that's a much better option if they want to be kind of doing these weird things. I was disappointed that they only played it on that map, even though that playing it on King of the Hill is probably the most most success you're going to get out of that. Like it was popularized primarily on Lijiang, for instance. So
Mm.
yeah, I think that there are like still flashes of like the old like mid-tier competent Boston team, but they're experimenting to a level that they really shouldn't be.
Right. At this point in the
Yeah,
season, for sure. What about Dallas? What do they really need to work on? I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Dallas is super interesting. I think that again with Dallas, where they were kind of playing like they're making weird swaps where they're playing, for instance, like in the past stage when they had to flex Sombra, since Note had joined the team, they had put AKM on Sombra, who's classically the much better Sombra player, and they've had Note flex to the Zarya role. And it seems like this stage so far, they're leaning more towards trying to get Note to flex onto Sombra when they're playing Sombra Goats, which has become much more prevalent at this stage.
Mm.
And I think that, again, similar to Boston, where they're kind of experimenting with new things to try and like play again against a team like the Hunters, who have been also experimenting on their own with this whole main tank experiment, Ameng versus Jishiren.
Right.
So like there's been a lot of internal experimentation on a lot of these like mid to low tier teams so far this stage, and I think that it's probably not correct to be like messing with like the recipe that works to this extent. Like the doing that sort of thing is like kind of what you would do in practice or in scrims, like just to see whether something feels right, and then kind of make a call whether that's something you want to actually implement on the stage. And it
Hmm.
seems like these teams just kind of are doing their experimentation on the stage, and that's not going to necessarily work out all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, and even just not putting in some of their best players to me is such a bad mistake. I know they want to try out these new things, but some of these, even if I think it's part of it has to do with goats, where you have a very strong DPS playing a healer, and then you want to switch out your healer for something else, and you end up putting in a different player. But you know, if that player is has such good technical skills, you still want to keep them in my
Yeah.
opinion. Um, Other than that, trying to think of what else is notable this week. I mean, Philly did okay. They beat Boston narrowly. um,
I mean, it looks on paper like it was narrow, but I
mm,
mean, maps 3 and 4 were like totally one-sided in Philly's favor.
oh,
So
really?
like, yeah, like they were just not even particularly close. The Boston was held first point both times, and they completely fell apart in the second half. So like, yes, Boston was really dominant on Ilios, and yes, Paris was pretty back and forth and ended up in a draw. But the maps 3 and 4 were just like totally one-sided in Philly's favor. So like,
Mm,
it was a lot more dominance than a 2-1 scoreline would lead you to believe.
right, right. No, another match that I actually really enjoyed was LA Valiant versus Guangzhou Charge, with of course LA Valiant coming out ahead. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was definitely rooting for them during the match. It just felt like they were making the right calls, and um, this is a team that was at the bottom of the ranks at the beginning of the season, and now they seem to be getting a bit better. I
Yeah,
don't.
no, I mean, I think they've definitely come on top in the trade they had with Florida. Fact Fiction has been very strong and has really brought a lot to the team. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see where they go from here, and whether they can, sneak their way into the playoffs at the end of the day. But
Right, playing against teams that are better than Guangzhou Charge. We'll see,
yeah,
but
yeah.
but yeah. I mean, other than that, it was pretty okay week, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, also looking at next week, there also seems to be kind of a lot of what are probably going to be one-sided matchups. I think there are a
Mm,
couple of probably interesting matches. I think New York, London could be interesting.
yeah,
Gladiator, Shanghai could be interesting.
very good.
Seoul versus Spark could be interesting. But otherwise, it seems like a lot of them will probably be one-sided.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing San Francisco versus Florida Mayhem. That should
Oh yeah,
be a
yeah, that'll
lot.
be a
That should be painful, honestly.
a real.
Uh,
It'll be nice to see some more grab shot into nothingness from BQV.
yeah. Uh, yeah, it should be a blast. All right, well, I think that's about it for this episode. Thank you all for watching, and make sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at WickedGoodEverything. Make sure to follow Ben on Twitter at Ben Sharon. I'm not on there, but you can follow Brian to check out what's happening with the Tijuana Tigres at the fake BMAR. And yeah, make sure to stay tuned to Wicked Get Everything for all of your favorite video game related content.
Yeah. We also just launched a new podcast. Brian and his brother Liam have talking a lot about like life in general, and like
Mm,
his brother Liam is like a stand-up comedian, so just talking about stand-up comedy and that sort of thing. So check that out if that's down your roadhouse.
yeah, exactly.
That's not really a phrase, but yeah.
If it's down your roadhouse, if it's down your alley, I guess.
Down your alley or in your roadhouse. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are the two phrases. Yeah.
So yeah, well, yeah. Thank you for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye.